Your Microsoft 365 environment is less secure, less efficient, and less reliable today than it was the day you deployed it. Not because something broke, because the platform moved forward and your technical standards didn't. That's the pattern we see in almost every environment we assess. The initial deployment goes well. Microsoft Teams gets adopted, SharePoint sites get built, Exchange gets configured, and security policies get applied. And then, the organization moves on. That thinking is understandable. It's a cloud platform. Microsoft manages it, and the heavy lifting is done. But that assumption misses something fundamental about how Microsoft 365 actually works. This is not static infrastructure. Microsoft pushes new features monthly. They update existing capabilities continuously. They deprecate legacy functionality on timelines your organization doesn't control. And while all of that is happening at the platform level, your users are making changes too. Configuring team settings, building Power Automate workflows, deploying Power Apps, and creating SharePoint sites. Every one of those changes is a configuration decision being made without reference to any technical standard. And every month that goes by without a standards review, your environment drifts further from the security baseline you originally set. The consequences show up in three places simultaneously, and that's what makes this problem hard to diagnose. Performance degrades, SharePoint pages load more slowly, Teams call quality drops, and search results become less reliable. Security weakens. Conditional access policies that were appropriate 18 months ago don't account for new threat vectors or new access patterns. Operational reliability erodes, integrations break, and automated workflows fail. Your IT team spends more time firefighting than optimizing. Each of those symptoms looks like a different problem. They're not. They're the same problem, expressing itself across three dimensions. The business impact compounds fast. Studies show every additional second of page load time costs 2 to 3% in user productivity. For knowledge workers hitting SharePoint dozens of times a day, that's 30 to 45 minutes of lost productivity per person. Multiply that across an organization, and the cost is substantial before you even account for the security exposure or the compliance risk. And here's the pressure point most organizations haven't fully absorbed. Microsoft's deprecation timelines are accelerating. Features your environment depends on today may be on a sunset path you haven't identified because no one is actively managing the relationship between your configurations and the platform's evolution. So the question isn't whether your environment has drifted from its original standards. It has. The question is whether you're going to manage that drift proactively or keep absorbing the cost of it until something breaks visibly enough to force the conversation. Addressing this requires a technical standards framework that treats Microsoft 365 as what it actually is, a platform that never stops changing and that can't be governed with a set-it-and-forget-it mindset. Here's how we structure that framework. First, establish configuration baselines with drift detection. Every critical service needs a documented, approved configuration baseline that reflects current best practices, not the settings from your original deployment. More importantly, you need automated monitoring that detects when actual configurations deviate from those baselines. Manual audits on a quarterly cycle can't keep up with a platform that changes monthly. The monitoring should flag drift in near real time and, for routine deviations, correct them automatically. Second, integrate security, performance, and compliance as a single standards layer. Most organizations manage these as separate work streams with separate teams and separate review cycles. That's how gaps form between them. When your security configuration changes, but your performance monitoring doesn't account for the new overhead, or when a compliance policy conflicts with an operational workflow and someone quietly disables it, you get exactly the kind of invisible drift that compounds into real risk. The technical standards need to treat these three dimensions as interconnected because on the platform, they are. Third, implement change management that matches the platform's pace. This means classifying changes by risk and complexity so that routine updates such as security patches or minor configuration adjustments move through quickly with appropriate documentation, while significant architectural changes get the review and testing they need. The goal is a change process that's fast enough to keep pace with Microsoft's release cycle, but structured enough to prevent one change from creating 3 new problems. Fourth, build measurement into the standards themselves. Track system health, configuration compliance, and business impact metrics continuously, not as a reporting exercise, but as the feedback loop that tells you whether your standards are actually working. If SharePoint performance is trending down over 6 months, that's a standards problem, not a help desk ticket. If security policy exceptions are accumulating faster than they're being resolved, that's a governance gap, not a backlog item. In practice, this framework rolls out in phases. Start with the services that carry the most business risk, typically your core collaboration and communication platform and your identity and access management layer. Establish baselines, deploy monitoring, and prove the model. Then extend it service by service, building the discipline for continuous standards management rather than trying to do everything at once. This is the work we do with organizations running complex Microsoft 365 environments. We've seen what happens when technical standards are treated as a deployment artifact instead of a living practice, and we've built the operational frameworks to close that gap. The full blog post goes significantly deeper on each of these areas: architecture design principles, security configuration specifics, infrastructure as code implementation, automated remediation patterns, and how to build service level targets that tie technical performance to business outcomes. If your environment has been running on its original deployment settings, that depth is worth your time. Your Microsoft 365 environment is changing right now, whether you're managing it or not. The only question is whether it's moving toward your standards or away from them.